Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been a few hours, folks, since the New York Mets officially were eliminated from the playoffs. It is 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And right off the bat, I just want to start off by thanking you for, you know, a great season on the channel, great comments, great stuff. You guys brought it to the table, and I really do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I had a live stream planned tonight, regardless of what happened. It was either going to be reaction, which it looks like we're going to talk about. We're going to go over some of the fresh some of the painful reaction. It's all fresh. We'll go over some of the reaction from some of the writers. Let's see what is out there right now. I have a lot of interesting takes on what everybody's saying. Obviously, most of the players were interviewed. Obviously, the big time players like Soto, Alonso, all were interviewed. Manager Manaya, Sean Manaya, his interview was a bit interesting as well. Mendoza, very interesting. The guy, he looked, in my opinion, the most distraught, and rightfully so. He takes full accountability right now, a full responsibility. I'm going to play some of his latest comments, and we will chime in on those. But you know what, folks? I hear this narrative how, oh, it was just one game. I mean, Pete Alonso, mentioned it like 10 times. It was just one game. It was just one game. Folks, the only reason why it ended up being one game is because we sunk to such an abysmal level. I mean, the Reds, the Giants, and the D-backs. The D-backs and the Giants virtually gave up on the season, and the Reds weren't really slated to win right now. Terry Francona did a great job, but we did horrible the second half. Although it was only amounted to one game, this is far less than what we envisioned we would amount to. I mean, the first half of the year, obviously, we were 21 games under 500. And if I told you what our final win total would be, or if I told any betting man to bet that we'd only get to this amount of wins, nobody would probably make that bet. Showing how the Mets for the last year, we were had the best record in baseball. We were trending in the right direction. I mean, this ship sank, and this ship sank slow motion. And I mean, it's epic, folks. This is going to go down as one of the most historic collapses in Major League history. Major League history. We were debating, is this the worst collapse or the worst season in Mets history? I mean, forget about that. This is going down as one of the most epic collapses in Major League history. So again, we're going to get to what the players are saying, what the managers are saying, what the writers are saying. But my thing is, I am so interested in what Mr. Smug has to say. And Mr. Smug, if you don't get the reference, is David Stearns. Guy always has a smile. Guy always repeats the same thing. And, I'm interested to see what the architect of one of the biggest disasters in MLB history has to say. Some short notes is we have Alonso. He is going to opt out. Right away, it was asked of Alonso, who has the most blame? Is it the coaches? Is it the players? Alonso's straight answer is he needs time to assess what went wrong. Well, by now, I think you should really know kind of that easy, basic question. They asked the same question to Nimmo. Who deserves more blame, more accountability, the players or the coaches? Nimmo, I got to say, I give him all the credit in the world. He's he's a much better speaker than Pete, but he plain simple said it. In my opinion, it is the players. We have the job to go out and execute. The coaches can only do so much. That is his opinion. Everybody has their opinion respectively. It was asked of Kodai Senga, how did you feel about not being able to pitch? And he said that the New York Mets felt that any other pitcher had a better chance to be in a rotation, and that is why he opted to go down. That the New York Mets had more confidence in the Tongs, the Sprouts. And it was also asked how he was feeling, and Senga had an interesting response. We all know Kodai Senga the first half of the year was was very dominating, very good. But the second half after the injury, obviously we saw a different picture, and he said that his body changed after the injury. Now the reporter kept kind of pressing him, what do you mean your body changed? And he just said the same thing, repeated, every time you get hurt your body tends to change. And I think in his situation is he didn't adapt to the changes yet. So that is Senga. Manaea, when it was his turn, he took accountability as well. I mean, he tried to hold back that traditional Sean Manaea smile, and he said that if he would have performed just a smidge better, or anything like he did last year, Sean Manaea was just putrid compared to last year. One of the worst acquisitions that David Stearns acquired. That 3-year, $75 million contract, looks pretty not good at this point. Not good. So again, we're going to go over some of those reactions. I'm going to play those for you so we can look and analyze them together. But first off, again, I want to thank everybody, right in here right now. Will, Scott, Dan, Tommy, Jay, you guys are great. You got some great comments right now. Will, give me flowers. I mean, you've been saying it, but in Pete Alonso's words, it was only by one game. But I've heard a lot of players say. But the Mets, despite the other teams not being so good, so it only amounted to one game, the play was just abysmal for the last couple months. Abysmal. And Scott, the torture is over. The torture is over. Now we get to deep dive into what went wrong and how do we fix it? Dan, you're right. Pete is just being modest because he knows they suck and he's just getting out of there. I mean, if that's the case, and if it's just all about me, all about him, I like Pete. I think he cares about the team. I think he's just not the best speaker. That's what I've learned about Pete. He doesn't always say the right thing, and that's okay. He's not in public speaking. He's a Major League Baseball player. So, I mean, that's just Pete. Tommy, you're right. Is Mendoza going to get fired? You know what? It was asked, about if Mendoza deserves his job. I'm going to play that pretty soon. My take is there's going to be accountability. There has to be accountability. This is a historic collapse. This is not just like an everyday thing. We had a ridiculous payroll. We had talent. We had resources. Again, I'm going to heap a lot of the accountability on Mr. Smug, David Stearns, but right now on the field, did Carlos Mendoza do a good job as the general of that team, leading his troops into battle, making sure that we were always ready to and prepared to play and give it our best effort game in and game out. And I didn't see it, folks. I did not see it. And this is a win now team. If this was a team that I said, okay, Mendoza can grow with, in 3 to 5 years, if this was in the beginning of the Steve Cohen, when he bought the team 5 years ago, I'd be like, okay, Carlos Mendoza makes more sense back then. But right now, when you signed Soto to $800 million, Francisco Lindor to $341 million, Sean Manaea $75 million, you gave Pete Alonso $30 million, Brandon Nimmo's got a lot of money, Edwin Diaz has a lot of money, your payroll sitting $300+ million, you are paying ridiculous penalties and taxes. At this point right now, you need a leader in there who is a win now manager, an X's and O's, I would say a genius, a guy that you never have to worry about being outmanaged, a guy who can put himself into that clubhouse and has a presence about him. And if there's anything that is going on with the players, whether it be chemistry issues, whether it be anything, that his presence, the way about him, he can make it right. Kind of like a Joe Torre, and I know that is, far and few between, but, somebody who is a soothing, calming presence, and he has that, way about him, like Carlos Beltran. If you would have went in that direction, at least now you're going with a Hall of Famer, a Mets legend, a guy, who has credibility. But you know what? David Stearns went in the direction he went into, and, we see the results, and the results are far from where we wanted them to be. All right, so we're going to get into some reaction right now. And the headlines aren't good. The headlines aren't good. If you look at, I'm just going to read you some of the headlines. Here's one by John Heyman. These $340 million Mets are MLB's all-time money pit. That's not a very flattering title. Next one, Pete Alonso declares contract decision and Edwin Diaz may follow in major Mets uncertainties. That's written by Mark Sanchez. That makes sense. Another one, here's David Stearns. Carlos Mendoza are on the clock after a Mets heartless flop. Both their jobs could be in dire straits. We are going to talk about that. It's going to be a saga about Carlos Mendoza and about David Stearns. Until we know their certainty, until we know they are guaranteed to come back, it is going to be a running dialogue. First, do they deserve to come back? And second, are they going to get the thumbs up by Steve Cohen that they are coming back? And again, my guess, and I've been saying this for months and months, that Carlos Mendoza, I don't think so. David Stearns, I am more likely believe that he will be coming back because his position is more long-term. Okay, so kind of let's get into, the implosion. And you see all over the internet, everybody dissecting when it happened. It's kind of like, okay, let's see. So everybody's pinpointing June 12th. June 12th, that is when the Mets had the best record in baseball. The Mets had the best record in baseball. They had the best record for the last year. They were flying high. They were still waiting on Manaea. They were still awaiting on Juan Soto to basically heat up, although I think he started to heat up in the beginning of that month. But still, they were still waiting on a couple key things. The trade deadline was quickly approaching, so everybody was optimistic that we would get help. We would get a center fielder that made an impact. We might get a starting pitcher. We will get these impact bullpen arms. So there was so much hope and optimism. And not to mention, we still had the young kids, Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, and we were all excited to see what we had. All right, so that is June 12th. Okay, so here's this. There is no sense in beating around the bush and calling it anything other than what it is. New York Mets failing to make the postseason is a colossal failure. It's a failure by the players, first and foremost. It's a failure by the coaches, the front office, and ownership as well. No one escapes blame, and that is what I've been saying for weeks. In fact, months. There's plenty of blame to go around. Carlos Mendoza, one of his quotes, he said he's pissed, he's sad, he's frustrated. You name it. These are quotes by Carlos Mendoza, and obviously he said this a few short hours ago when emotions were raw and fresh. And again, getting back to, when you can pinpoint it, when the Mets fell off the rails, June 12th, and, I'm looking at somebody, the moment they said is when Pete Alonso flipped the ball to Kodai Senga, covering first base, and the ball, like Pete has done many times, sailed high. Senga jumped for the ball, and Senga pulled his hamstring. He then exited the game and missed a month and was never the same. So that is very important because at that point, that was the beginning of the losing streak, and you took away your ace pitcher. So again, I agree. That was a very monumental turning point. So again, that particular game, and I remember it well, the Mets managed to hang on. We beat the Washington Nationals that day, and we improved to our all-time season high, 21 games over 500, 45-24. Senga's injury, that was very unfortunate, but things still were going as planned. The pitching was great. The $765 million man, Juan Soto, was starting to shake off his slow start, and the Mets looked like a juggernaut. They were supposed to be after last year's run. All was well at that point. All was well. One day later, the Mets lost the first game in what would become the first of 3 7-game losing streaks down the rest of the season. Look at that, folks. We had 3 7-game losing streaks. That is abysmal. So the Mets were an MLB best 45-24 through June 24th. They went 38-55 the rest of the way. That is the 5th worst record in baseball. Folks, I mean, people who, argue that this team, should be fighting for the World Series, and I wanted them again, and no matter what, but we were the 5th worst record in baseball since June 12th. Not good, not good, not good. We had 69 games of excellence the first half of the year. And the second half of the year, or more than that, were 93 games of the worst played baseball. Worst. So the 2025 Mets were bad, much longer than they were great. Let that sink in. They were bad much longer. We were bad for 93 games, and we were good for 69 games. So what happened here? What happened? Why did the Mets fall so short, and how can they avoid this next season? How could we contend? Let's dig into what happened in 2025 and how could we fix this in 2026. All right, so we're going to continue to get into this. Again, I want to continue to say hi to everybody chiming in. Richard chiming in as well. How's it going? Will, I know I said hello to you, but always, I got to say hello to you multiple times. You are one of the channel's #1 commenters. I always love your great commentary. Daniel, how's it going? Mr. Positivity. I always love when you chime in. Tim, what's up? My man Tim, always great commenting as well. So, all right, so we're going to continue to deep dive into what went wrong, and we still have commentary coming up, so stay tuned. Okay. I think we all know this, and I've said this, the Mets pitching problem is going to be historic. And you could say the Mets ran out of pitching. You could say, although we made a record, we used the most pitchers in MLB history. I think it was over 50. Previous record was 45 or 46. So we not only beat the record, we shattered the record. So the Mets finished 9th in runs scored per game with a team 114 OPS plus. They went 10-15 in September. 10-15 in September. So again, the stretch one, when we were supposed to turn it on, 10-15 in September. And in those games, we averaged 4.64 runs a game. The offense was there. The pitching was not, folks. The pitching was not. And although I got to say, to be fair, the offense was very inconsistent because when we needed it, games like today, the offense did disappear. And certain games, the offense just looked abysmal. Okay, so the problem was the Mets allowed at least 5 runs in 7 of their last 11 games. After July 26th, they won 1 game while scoring fewer than 5 runs. And here's the injuries. The Senga hamstring injury, devastating. The Griffin Canning Achilles tear. And at the time, I was saying, wow, you know what? That stinks. That's what was my reaction. It stinks, but we have Manaea coming back. Senga's hamstring will heal. We still got the rookies. We still got the trade deadline. We still got Tyler McGill, Frankie Montas. Griffin Canning injury, it seemed like it stunk because he was pitching, but I didn't think it would be devastating. It turned out to hurt much more. So you had the Sanger injury, you had the Griffin Canning injury, you had the Tyler McGill. He ended up having Tommy John, so he missed most of the year. Manaea, he missed the first couple months, and then when he came back, he was never quite right. Frankie Montas, obviously, that signing was a total dud, a flop, and then he ended up getting hurt. So the Mets are going to have to pay him $34 million through 2026. And folks, get this. He only threw 38 innings and had a 6.28 ERA. So as much as I get on the Manaea signing, the Montas signing was even worse. And the horrible thing is both those signings came in the same year. So that was a doozy of an offseason by David Stearns in terms of pitching acquisitions. Now, you had two pretty consistent pitchers throughout most of the season. Clay Holmes, David Peterson. They were rocks. They were, rocks up top of the rotation for most of the season. But to be fair, they regressed tremendously towards the end of the season. Very badly in the case of David Peterson. So, I got some numbers right here. In the first half, Clay Holmes' first half ERA was 3.31. Second half ERA, 3.98. So, second half, around a 4. First half, 3.31. Peterson, this is dramatic. First half, 3.06. Second half, 6.43. More than doubled his ERA. And, what happened at the trade deadline? Did the Mets acquire what they needed the most? Did they acquire a veteran starter? Did they acquire a guy who would uplift the rotation and therefore take pressure off that bullpen? No, they did not. The Mets did not add a Merrill Kelly. They did not add a Shane Bieber. They did not add anybody who could potentially stabilize that rotation. Instead, they focused on their rookies. McLean, Sprout, Tong. They combined to start 12 of the New York's final 20 games. I mean, look at that, folks. Our rookies did 12 of the final 20 games. McLean was terrific. McLean was lined up to start game 1 of the wild card series. And if the Mets qualified, it's that's I don't want to get into that, but that's pretty sad. But also, a lot of people brought this to my attention. If Nolan McLean would have come up just 30 days earlier and got 4 or 5 more starts, of course, that would have made all the difference. Of course, the Mets would have had probably 2 or 3 more wins. And, the season obviously, we could have put the wild card situation to bed a while back. Okay. So Cohen and David Stearns splurged for Soto. We all know that. Then took small bites to round out the rotation, converting Holmes back into the rotation from the bullpen. Ultimately a win, even though he wasn't an impact starter. You really betted that Manaya's lower arm slot, his reinvention of last year, could progress. Could he, emulate what he did last year? But he didn't. It just didn't work out. And Montez was a loss. And albeit Cohen can afford it, he definitely can afford to eat some of these contracts. But again, we are just so far over that third luxury tax that, it just makes everything look so much work. It really does. All right, folks, how are we all feeling? I got pages and pages and pages and pages of notes of disaster analysis. So, but how are we all feeling? Because honestly, as much as we saw this coming, I'm pretty sure there was always that thing in the back of our heads saying that the Mets, they'll find a way. They have talent. They have Juan Soto. They have Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Edwin Diaz. McLean looks like he's going to be a decent ace potential guy. But again, I mean, the Mets that's 93 games. And I didn't realize that. As I was calculating everything, 93 games. That's a significant. Most of the year, the Mets were the 5th worst record in baseball. Putting in perspective, I knew we were bad. I knew we were in the middle of the pack. I knew we played under 500 for a long period of time, but I didn't realize that we were the 5th worst team. And then the trade deadline, that I'm not sure if it's looming large right now, but if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that was also another colossal failure for this team. And, again, you can compare our efforts to, teams like the Phillies who got better. There were a lot of teams who improved themselves. And then there were other teams who traded off pieces and still made a good running. Diamondbacks, they traded off pieces, and yet they still only came 1 or 2 games shy. The Giants, they traded off pieces and still came up a couple games shy. The Mets went all in, pedal to the metal, gave up 10 or 12 prospect assets and still could not make the playoffs and had a $340 million payroll. So, I mean, that just makes it even worse. Okay, so I'm going to get back to some analysis, but let me get to the Carlos Mendoza. I want to get to his comments. And I would say he was the most emotional. You know, sometimes when you have end of game interviews, you see some players in very emotional states. It's very raw. Some players are crying. Some players are almost in tears. Other players are more businesslike. And I did see the Mets, to be fair, most of the Mets players were more that business-like attitude. So it doesn't mean that's a bad thing, but that's what I observed. Carlos Mendoza, I'm going to play him first. He was more emotional. He was more raw, and he took accountability. I'm going to cue that momentarily.
The emotions of this moment?
It's hard to describe. I just got done addressing the team, and like there's no word to describe. What we're going through. It's pain, it's frustrations. There's you name it. Came in with a lot of expectations, and here we are going home. Not only we fell short, we didn't even get into October. And this is a team that is built to not only get to October, but to play deep into October. And again, pissed, sad, frustrated.
And folks, if you listen to this man right now, and you look into his eyes, you see, I mean, he's holding back tears. He might have actually, cried. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So, but you could tell how much this meant to him, and how, I'm not saying that he should be the manager. I'm not saying he didn't make a ton of mistakes, but I'm just saying that he is really hurt right now.
I mean, you name it.
You talked all season about the talent in the room and that giving you hope that it would turn around. Why ultimately do you think that talent couldn't get results?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that we're going to have to answer here, because the whole year I kept saying, we got the talent, and here we are going home. I take responsibility. I'm the manager. It starts with me, and, I got to take a long look here, how I need to get better, and then that was a message into the whole team as well.
All right, so right now you just heard something huge. And Scott, I agree with you. Stearns definitely needs to hire a GM. The guy's taking accountability right now. I still think the guy deserves to be fired. He's not the manager that I think is going to bring us to the promised land next year. But the guy, at least he's taking accountability. He might be fired tomorrow. He might be fired in a week. But the guy right now is saying, hey, you know what? I'm the manager. I messed up. We all have to look ourselves in the mirror. So at least he did say that.
This is unacceptable.
What are your initial thoughts on what needs to change here?
I mean, it's too early, right? We just got done here. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of time here to sit back and reflect in how everything went down. But right now it's just the frustration. Because we're going home.
Carlos, you're concerned at all about your own future potentially with the organization?
Look, I mean, since day one, when you're on this chair, you're on the hot seat. As simple as that. And when you're managing a team that has a lot of expectations and you go home, questions like this are going to come up, and that's part of it. Like I said, I'm responsible, and I have to be better. As simple as that.
What went into the pitching decisions in that inning, especially bringing in Stanek at that point?
Yeah, I mean, once we knew we were going to be really short with Sean Manaea, right? Once he got in trouble and he becomes.
Okay, let's talk about things. I see some commentary going. Ray, I see what you say. Mendy has a 0 baseball IQ. I wouldn't say it's 0. I would say it's very low, but not quite 0. I do think Mendy deserves to be out of here. And right now, when I say he is taking accountability. What I was alluding to is the guy is trying to say whatever he has to say to save his job. I haven't heard Mendoza say anytime before this, I take accountability, I'm responsible. So even though I see the words coming out, I'm not sure, if he's doing it anything other than to save face, save his job, and, whatever. That it is what it is. But the New York Mets right now have to move forward in a big way. Changes need to be made, not with heartfelt strings attached. New York Mets have to be business-like, and they have to thread the needle. And Carlos Mendoza right now did not lead those troops into battle. I was not confident. Though, you look at that team. That team had their shoulders slumped and their heads down literally many games in the last couple of weeks. But certainly today, if you look at the players from the second, third inning on, everybody had their heads down. Everybody had their shoulders slumped. And who is the leader? Who is the guy in charge? Carlos Mendoza. Pitching too, all the pitchers went to crap, went to hell. And again, did the coaches put these pitchers in a position to, execute? I don't think so. I know the pitchers have to go out there and execute, but how the hell does every single pitcher fail? How does every single pitcher that you were relying on absolutely fail? I agree. Carlos Mendoza has to go. And I said this weeks ago. I said my thing would David Stearns, just because of the long-term nature of the position. I think that he failed abysmally this year. Mr. Smug, again, he has a lot of shortcomings as well. Again, I think his position is just more long-term, so he's not going to get fired. But I agree with Scott, and I've said this before, he needs to hire a GM. He needs to hire a GM because there are certain parts, many parts of that job that he is not adept at, that he does struggle with. And he needs another voice in the room to, I guess, challenge him as well, because obviously, how many times did he fail? He failed over and over and over and over. His signings were failures. Manaya and Montas, those are two of the worst signings, in Mets history in the last couple of years. The trades, both trade deadlines were failures. This year was a failure. Last year was a failure. All the moves in the season, failures. The pitching lab this year, failure. It's just that there were just so many failures that, you got to blame the architect as well. You have to certainly blame the architect. Let's get back to Mendoza. But again, this is the first time I see that he's taking accountability. So I pointed out. But again, at this point right now, I agree. He's trying to save face.
A bullpen game, you're trying to piece it together. Stanik's going to play a role. Rogers going to play a role. Sugar, everyone is going to have to get out. And you play the matchups there. We felt good going in for those matchups, and it didn't work.
Carlos, ¿crees que el equipo perdió confianza en algún momento durante esta recta final de la temporada?
No, yo no diría confianza. Sencillamente que no hicimos el trabajo, no hicimos lo que teníamos que hacer. Un equipo con tanto talento y aquí estamos, pues un equipo que está construido para jugar no solamente en octubre, sino profundamente en octubre. Y nos vamos a casa. Decepcionado, obviamente, pero el responsable soy yo como manager.
Pero ¿cómo se arma un equipo que no tiene consistencia? Que el día que viene la defensa no vienen los bateadores o los lanzadores fallan.
Sí, no, claro. Obviamente, eso es la frustración también. Fuimos un equipo bastante inconsistente todo el año. Y vuelvo y repito, el responsable como manager soy yo. Yo soy el que tiene que estar al frente de todas esas áreas y lamentablemente nosotros no pudimos dar ese paso al frente. Aquí nos estamos yendo a casa con un juego de diferencia y es lamentable.
What do you think this team was missing this year? Was there any sort of intangible aspect that you can put your finger on?
No, I mean, look, it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe, because you look around, there was talent, but we were very inconsistent. We had a hard time putting everything together.
Folks, you listen to the question. What was your team missing this year? Was there any intangible that your team was missing? He goes, no, and then he doesn't really answer the question. He goes back to his crutch. There was talent on this team. Again, the guy has to be able to answer what, you need to improve, what the team is missing. I mean, I think the biggest thing the team's missing is, a lack of leadership is one of them. So obviously that's, a detrimental on himself. Fundamentals was horrible this year. A lot of things that reflect badly on him. So maybe that's why he's skirting around that question.
But it's hard to just blame one specific area.
Pete Alonso hits that ball again. He said after that, the guys would be pressing more for maybe this wasn't.
I mean, look, off the bat, I thought it was in the gap, and we're right back in the game. And before you know it, the guy's making a play, and he takes a toll on the guys. There was our chance right there, and we didn't capitalize.
Para hacer la cosa mejor de cara a la próxima temporada. La temporada anterior fue mucha presión también y lograron avanzar. En esta queda a nada. ¿Qué a simple vista crees que hace falta para la siguiente campaña para que sea un mejor equipo?
Sí, no, yo creo que es muy temprano. Nos acaban de eliminar. Obviamente, pues vamos a tener bastante tiempo para buscar y hacer esos ajustes, porque como lo digo, esto no es aceptable para nosotros. Es un equipo que tenemos muchas expectativas y no llegamos a cumplir la meta.
Well, let's go back to the pitching decisions for a second. When you're mapping out this game, how do you decide between attempting to use Peterson for bulk versus trying to use all the bullpen arms the way that you did?
Yeah, no, and especially with how many righties. Peterson wasn't on the equation there. With as many righties they have, you're expecting to kind of go right on right if they.
And that is another comment that boggles my mind. Peterson wasn't in the equation, and I'm fine with that. But Manaea was the starter because there's so many righties. I don't get that. So there's so many righties in the lineup that Peterson can't be in this game, but that's why you start the lefty in Manaea. I don't get the logic. It's the same logic, but it doesn't make sense. All right, so he doesn't really say much after this. It just kind of repeats the same thing. So we're gonna go more commentary, but again, I didn't really hear anything new. I didn't really hear anything great. His post-game analysis, again, he goes to a lot of these crutches, like we have the talent, this and that. Not very good at answering questions, not very good at analysis, not very good at finding what the problems, the issues were. Carlos Mendoza, not a very good X's and O's guy. Again, we were missing a lot in that clubhouse. We were certainly missing a lot. Ray, I saw what you wrote about, Dolan doesn't raise ticket prices when the Knicks have a shit season. Uncle Stevie is not Dolan. Cancel season tickets. I mean, that's the one thing I can't do. But I will say this. Season tickets, Mets tickets, going to a game is ridiculously, crazily priced. I 100% agree with that. We waste a lot of our hard-earned money on teams when they don't produce. The product was abysmal, right? If the product is good, you could pay a premium for it. This year, the product was not good. We were told in the beginning of the year, Steve Cohen, come out. We almost went to the World Series. We got a first-place team. We signed Juan Soto. The team got worse and worse and worse. So I agree in one respect that be wary, be cautious. If the product is not a premium, why would you pay a premium price? But, I can never really advocate canceling, tickets, but I understand that sentiment. This is, another aspect. This is the worst collapse in Mets history, factoring an extra wild card spot. That is, you're right. They just have now you have 6 teams able to vie for that thing. And you also have the Mets spending, a ridiculous amount of money. And, you look at the payroll. It's not only the payroll. It's spending $11 million on the president. It's injecting a bunch of resources in analytics, in scouting, in resources, in technology. The New York Mets are spending a monumental amount of money in everything. We are losing so much money this year. Last year, we lost $150 million. It's just abysmally bad. It's abysmally bad. And that's a great point, Kev, about the extra wild card spot. That's a great point as well. All right, so we got other guys as well.
such an incredible start to the season.
All right, this is the unofficial captain.
Why do you think that it turned as badly as it did?
Execution. Just we didn't execute when we had to, and yeah, there's that.
What are you feeling personally right now?
A lot. I feel that the job, felt the mission. It was something that it was on us, on me, and on the players to get it done, and we didn't execute. We didn't get it done. Front office did a really good job. Coaching staff did a good job. It sucks. It's not a good feeling.
Francisco, ¿qué puedes decir de este grupo que quizás va a pasar desapercibido por el resultado de esta tarde?
Pues que es un grupo de jugadores muy bueno. Muy bueno.
You know what was very interesting? You just heard Lindor say that the coaching and the front office did a great job. You also heard Nimmo say that the coaching and the front office did a great job, that it was the players. Lindor also said it was the players as well. I've noticed that the players with the long-term contracts, and, rightfully so, you're there, you are going to continue to, praise your bosses, the front office, the coaches. Whereas Pete Alonso, when it was asked of him, who deserves the most blame, the coaches or the players, he goes, you know what? Pete Alonso says, I have to assess that. I have to analyze that. So, I hear people saying, foolish genius, you write template responses. Lindor is very kind of polished with his speech. I'm not really sure if we ever get, him to kind of go off that, if it is some type of, internal script. He is very polished. I'll say that. So he doesn't really give you much. But let's see.
Una persona. Y este grupo nunca va a estar junto de nuevo. Vamos a ser el mismo grupo del año que viene. Van a haber diferentes personas porque hay personas que son agentes libres. Y pues, duele que no logramos la misión.
What do you think was missing from this team this year, if anything, any sort of intangible aspect that just wasn't there when it needed to be?
I don't want to say something was missing. Like I said, the front office did an outstanding job of putting the best team possible on the field, and I didn't execute. I didn't, I failed the mission. As players, we are responsible. We're accountable for what goes down on the daily basis. I don't think it's about missing something. It's about just we didn't get it done.
Paquito, este equipo comenzó bien y de repente, sufre su bajón, un poco de inconsistencia, levanta, baja. ¿A qué tú crees que se debió la inconsistencia que hubo durante esta campaña?
La inconsistencia pues viene en nosotros. Al final del día no ejecutamos los momentos que teníamos que ejecutar. No logramos la misión. Las inconsistencias son parte de la...
Okay. It's tough with Lindor because Lindor is going to say the company line. That's the thing with Lindor. He's going to say the company line. So you're really not going to get much from Lindor. I'm going to play Alonso's responses momentarily. Alonso was a lot more open. But again, Alonso is not, he could choose to come back to the Mets. These other guys have long-term contracts. So again, maybe they are more by the book. Pete's going to be a tough decision. It really is. And I firmly believe Pete was very hurt last year. It's blatantly obvious. Pete had to have that personal sit down where Steve Cohen and him had to have a meeting. He had to question Steve Cohen. Why are you paying me so little? Look at what I've done for you. And Pete basically said, I'm paying you what the market. Steve basically said, I am paying you what the market dictates. So it'll be very interesting to see if the market dictates, which I assume it will, because there will be more suitors for Pete Alonso. There will be more suitors in the Pete Alonso market, hence more demand, hence higher price. So will the Mets meet that high price? Will they make good on the promise? Will they say, hey, they told them this year, go out, have a great season. The market will, the market will probably say you did better next year if your numbers bear better results, and we'll pay you, or, we'll make an offer. Let's see if the Mets are going to make an offer. Let's see. And again, Pete was disappointing last year. He really was. And, I got to say, he went out there and produced. He definitely went out there and produced. He certainly did. And he came up clutch a couple times in the last couple of games. Can't say that for other players. So, Richard, you think he's going to ask in the 40s? 40s. No first basemen are making anywhere close to the 40s. If he asks anywhere near the 40s again, there's only one solution for that. Again, it's got to be what the market dictates for the position that he plays based on the age that he is. Those market conditions. I think that you're going to see people bid around the 100 million point. Last year the Mets were one of the only teams willing to give him 2 years, $54 million. There weren't many teams in the market for that sort of contract. So I'm not thinking that, if he gets an Alex Bregman like contract, 3 years, $40 million a year, $120 million. Honestly, that would shock the hell out of me. That would really shock the hell out of me. But you know what? Desperate teams do desperate things. And if they see Pete as that missing piece, and Pete does some pretty nice things. He truly does. He's a dynamic run producer, traditionally producing 120 plus RBIs, hitting around 40 home runs a year. And now you saw his average. His average got so much better this year, hitting over 270. So Pete was certainly more of the complete package. Hitting with runners in scoring position, much better this year, laying off that slider on the outside corner, not chasing as frequently as he did last year. So Pete really did what he needed to do. And Ray, you're right. Stearns will not bring Pete back. And the thing is, if you look at the payroll right now, let's just say right now the Mets don't do anything, and they sign the guys that are eligible for arbitration. They sign all the guys eligible for arbitration, and they give Pete $30 million, right? They give Pete $30 million a year. The Mets are already at $300 million. Without making any addition, they're at $300 million. So the Mets payroll situation is in crisis mode right now. It's not like last year. The Mets last year had a lot of money coming off of the books. If Edwin Diaz if he opts out of the contract, okay, that creates some money. But if the Mets sign Pete Alonso and they have Edwin Diaz come back at around $20 million, the Mets are already at $300 million. So again, can I see why Stearns would not go down that road? Yeah, because the Mets are in a financially bad situation right now. All right, so let's get to the Pete comments, and then we'll get to Juan Soto because he said some pretty interesting things as well. And Soto is still very damn happy he chose the New York Mets.
Pete, you guys were so confident all year that you'd get it fixed and turned around. What is the level of surprise? How stunning is it that it didn't end up happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one game. It just shows the value of what one game means over the course of 162 games. I mean, you look at today, but honestly, I mean, I don't know. There's quite a handful of opportunities like throughout the year that stand out in my mind. It's not just today. You know, I mean, I mean, not every loss is. I mean, there's obviously some ones where it's like, hey, there's no coming back. There's no, hey, we just straight up lost. But that happens over the course of a season. But yeah, there's a lot more that you like, man, there's a lot more meat left on the bone where it's like, man, if we did this or that. I remember talking with you, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but it wasn't like necessarily one thing. It was just like one thing here, one thing here. It was just like a little bit of everything kind of, or it's like something different. It wasn't just one thing throughout the course of the year. So, I mean, it's really.
See, I think Pete's really having trouble trying to say what it really is. He's trying to say that many things went wrong, but trying to leave out specifics because, you know, you could see he's struggling. You could really see he's struggling, but
really, it's kind of beyond frustration. I think it's just straight up disappointing, and there's no other way to sugarcoat it, and it's just the way it is. I mean, again, super talented team, and the reality is we fell short. I mean, we didn't even get to October. We fell short.
You've been a part in your time here of some really excellent teams and then some teams that were talented but didn't reach expectation. Is there any through line or any similarity between the ones that don't get there despite what looks to be a playoff roster?
I mean, it's different personnel, so sometimes it's tough to say, but just from like this year, it's like I feel like when we were playing our best baseball, it's like we were everything was hitting on all cylinders, and when things weren't necessarily like the really really good teams that have been a part of, we've been able to kind of like patch holes where it's like we were be able to pick each other up. Like let's say someone makes an error in the field, but pitcher bears down, or let's say pitcher gives up 2 or 3 runs, hitters erase the deficit, or at least getting a like scratching 1-1 across. Like we'll get like.
I definitely do agree with that sentiment. You know, when a guy makes an error, you know, it's good when the next inning up, you know, the hitters, they compensate and they get a couple runs back or another player picks you up. This team did not pick each other up at all. In fact, if errors were made, that led to things steamrolling out of control. So, you know, that was a very, good point by Pete.
I mean, again, it's like just we didn't really do a good job of kind of like cutting down deficits and eliminating bounce back runs and kind of covering each other's miscues. Because I mean, it's going to happen. Like miscues happen, mistakes happen, not just in one game, but over the course of the year. It's just when you go over a long period of time with those, I mean, the devil's in the details. And I mean, again, it's one game. It's so small, but like in baseball, if you miss by an inch, it feels like a mile. And this one game, if you look at throughout the course of the year, it's like there's however many examples in the loss column that we have where we could have easily had an extra couple victories.
How much of that is on the coaches and how much of that is on the players?
I don't really know. I mean, it's kind of just. I mean, I haven't even reflected really on anything. It's just kind of. Like the last out's made, it's just kind of like it's just kind of tough to wrap your mind around because like the entire year you're working for something, and then just for us not to earn the right to go to the postseason, like it was never in anyone's mind that we'd be in the spot. So I think like,
folks, very, very, very big thing. They asked this question to every player. Whose fault is it more? Is it on the coaches or the players? You hear Pete Alonso does not answer that. He sidesteps that question.
I I don't even know. I haven't even had time to reflect on that. I mean, it's a good. I'm sorry. It's a good question.
This is a talented team. Is there anything about the personality that could have been different? Any more edge or any more passion that you could have?
I don't think edge or passion was. I mean, playing with these guys every single day. I mean, there was no question of heart or passion or want, desire, work ethic. Like there's, you can have all those things, and just that doesn't guarantee success. I mean, again, and you can be the most dispassionate person ever, but if you go 4 for 4 and drive in 10 runs, then it doesn't matter because that helps the team win. But just because you're passionate doesn't guarantee positive results. So, and we had plenty of effort. We had belief. We worked hard, but again, just because you work hard, you do the right things, you have a good process. That doesn't guarantee wins, and wins equals results. And obviously people are going to be upset and let down by that. So, that's a really tough life lesson. Just because you work hard doesn't necessarily mean that you're guaranteed results. You got to find a way to perform and get results.
What are your thoughts about your future with this franchise?
For me, playing for this organization, the city, it's really, for me, they've continued to believe in me. And I've loved playing here. There's some great guys in this clubhouse. There's some great people in the staff. And, every single day it's been a pleasure coming to work and putting on the orange and blue. So for me, it's, I've really appreciated and been nothing but full of gratitude every single day. Nothing's guaranteed, but we'll see what happens. I've loved being a Met, so hopefully they've appreciated me the same.
Do you expect to opt out of your contract?
Yes.
What's going to matter the most to you in free agency?
See that the quickest answer. Oh, you're gonna opt out of your contract? Didn't even hesitate. Yeah.
For me, it's I've really appreciated the question. I think the biggest thing is I've grown up in this organization, and you don't want to be in my mind for that one. That stunk because and for the fans. So it'd be great, but again, we'll see what happens.
Just what goes through your mind when that 116 mile per hour ball gets caught?
You don't want to be in my mind for that one.
Okay, yeah. So that I'm sorry, I kind of skipped something. Okay, so that was the last big question they asked in the 5th inning. We all know Alonso came up with bases loaded, Mets down 4-zip. He hit a laser, 116 mile per hour to the left center field gap. Left fielder comes over, makes a nice play, and obviously that was a monumental play for the Marlins, especially when the Mets offense was struggling. Hey, who knows what happens? That ball gets down. Mets even get 2 runs, cut into the lead. They get some momentum. They get some positivity on that bench. Who the hell knows? Didn't happen. Did not happen. The Mets had few and far between chances, but that was their biggest chance. Juan Soto came up with a couple of chances. He did not come through as well. All right. That did hurt Pete. He did want to mention that. Okay, so the last player that I wanted to get to was Juan Soto, the legend, the man, the myth, the $800 million man that all right now he gets to do is go home and spend his money. But again, before I do get to Juan Soto, whether you like Pete, whether you hate Pete, and even if you like Pete, whether you think he doesn't deserve the money or you think you don't want to pay a 31-year-old that type of money, that's all fair. But what I will say is that he will be missed. He will be. Honestly, he was one of our most productive players in the last 7 years. Obviously has the Mets home run record. He will be missed. I will miss him. I like Pete. Do I think that, the Mets they have to make some tough decisions. But, I did like Pete over the course of his career. He brought a lot to the table. He had a bad 2024, but he also brought some special moments. Rookie of the year, rookie home run record, a couple of home run derby championships. Did he get us to the promised land? No, but there are a lot of other factors out there that didn't help.
Juan, you've been a part of a lot of talented teams in the past that had success. Where did this go wrong in your mind?
What do you mean?
Why did this not translate? Why did the talent not translate to wins?
Baseball, man. Baseball. I don't think.
Folks, actually, you know what? Let me back this up. He asked for a second. What do you mean? Listen to the question. Let me know if it's tricky.
A lot of talented teams in the past that had success. Where did this go wrong in your mind?
What do you mean?
Why did this not translate? Why did the talent not translate to wins?
Baseball, man. Baseball. I don't think even if you have a great team in paper and nobody's going to bring it to you, you got to go out there and get it. So I think it's part of it, and we just fell off short.
You guys got off to such a good start this year. When it started to turn, was there one common theme that changed things in your mind?
I don't think so. We're just playing baseball. We got definitely we have a rough moments with our rotation. They got hurt. They were going up and down. I mean, they were unbelievable at the beginning, and then they started getting hurt, and that's when everything started going down. So I think if you look at it, it's that, but it's no excuses, man. We just got to play better.
¿Qué nos puedes decir del balance de esta temporada y qué puede quedar, digamos, fuera de foco debido al resultado de hoy en cuanto a la integridad de este grupo y a la forma en la que lucharon?
Yo creo que debemos enfocarnos en la cosa positiva, ¿sabes? No fue como quisimos, pero debemos enfocarnos en la cosa positiva que hicimos este año. Yo creo que el grupo que tenemos, el talento que tenemos, lo único que tenemos que tratar de mejorar es jugar mejor pelota con todo el talento que tenemos y salir hacia adelante.
¿Te da la impresión que pudiste haber dado más y en qué momento?
Siempre estoy tratando de dar lo mejor de mí. Cada vez que salgo ahí al terreno de juego, trato de hacer lo mejor que pueda. Nunca estoy conforme con nada de lo que hago, sino siempre quiero mejorar, siempre quiero hacer las cosas bien, ¿sabes? Trato de ayudar a mi equipo. Pero a veces no salen.
Well, what do you think has to change next year?
I mean, we have everything we need. I say we just got to win games. I think that's the only thing we got to change. Win games.
Sean said that he personally felt like he put too much pressure on himself down the stretch. Do you feel like that was an issue at all with the team? Sean, Mania?
I don't think I mean, everybody wants to come through, We're not asking for too much. We're asking for being himself, and do what he knows to do. Definitely we get to a point where we're trying to make it things better for the team and come through, but it's part of it. Sometimes we just got to think in the positive things and try to ride with it.
How would you assess your first season with the team?
I mean, it's a failure. Anytime you don't make it to the playoff or win a championship, it's a failure. That's how we're gonna look at it, and that's how we're gonna go through things in the offseason.
Signed here, you said you liked the talent in the organization and you felt that the future was bright. Do you still feel that way?
100%. One season is not gonna determine what we have in here. So we have everything that we need to go all the way still.
Edwin, what are you feeling right now?
Feel sad, as a team we couldn't accomplish our goals. So our goal was first of all make the postseason and then ended up winning the World Series. But at the end of the day, we couldn't make any of those.
Came in the fifth inning today, pitched 2 innings. Just were you prepared to go even longer if needed?
Yeah, this do or die this game today. So I was ready. They told me early in the game, if we need you early, be early in the bullpen, and come to the game, do your job. I came out for the.
Okay. All right. A lot of players saying the same thing. Edwin, give him. Edwin was a bit emotional. Edwin, he's probably going to opt out. But here's the deal. This game right now, going to Ryan Stanek at that point in the game, and potentially it never really got to Edwin Diaz's performance out there being consequential. You're already down 4-0. You already let a horse out of the barn. You already blew it with Stanek on the mound. That really killed me. Bringing Stanek in, and we had our live stream going, and literally as Stanek's coming out there, we're all saying, I'm saying, guy's gonna give up the lead. Guy's probably gonna give up a home run. Guys laying sliders up and out over the plate. While Edward Cabrera is throwing these nasty pitches off of the outside corner, and this guy's laying him right out over the plate like he's been doing so frequently. So no surprise there. And then, you bring Edwin Diaz in the game when you're already up 4-0. I mean, you just can't even make up of that logic. I mean, if it was, you want to just get to every inning clean, right? So I'd rather use Diaz first if you already have it game plan that he's going to come in early. So that didn't make sense to me. That really did not make sense to me. Did not make sense to me not going to David Peterson because there's a bunch of righties in the lineup. But then you start Sean Manaea, who is a lefty facing a bunch of righties. So again, the X's and O's by Carlos Mendoza, made little sense to me. The answers and analysis by Carlos Mendoza on why he went to certain moves made even less sense to me, but all the more reason for why I think this man will ultimately lose his job. Again, I feel he's a nice guy. He may progress to the next level of manager, being a better manager in 3 to 5 years, but that is not the timetable of this team. You have veterans right now. Lindor's going to be 31, 32 years old. Nimmo's 32, 33. If you have Alonso back, he's older. Edwin Diaz is older. Yes, you have some young pitchers, but this team right now is geared to win now. And I see the Nimmo chatter in the comments. I've been saying it for weeks. The guy can't play left field. It's blatantly obvious the guy can't play left field. The guy's already had a noodle for an arm, already had a noodle, but you could see his mobility out in left field is horrendous. Then you see all of these track stars from the Marlins, from the Brewers, all of their outfielders that could just go out there and get it easily. Nimmo doesn't have that ability anymore. And, that's what happens when you get older. That's what happens when you have a guy who has knee injuries, back injuries. It just happens. So Nimmo, again, you got to fix the defense. Fix the defense. You have to fix the defense. And, as much as I loved Alonso, one of the things that killed me about Alonso was his inability to hit the pitcher on a toss to first base. That killed me. And the last time, which really made me insane, is when Nolan McLean was covering first base, and he almost literally killed Nolan McLean. Threw a ball high. Nolan McLean had to jump for it. He came down. Luckily, he didn't get hurt, but that is a recipe for disaster. A disaster when your first baseman cannot make a 15, 20-foot toss. Again, you got to pick each other up. I know Pete mentioned that, but you also have to be able to play fundamental baseball. Mets were unable to do so. And again, that reared its ugly head time and time again. And then you see Juan Soto, and Juan Soto, as opposed to other guys, again, he's got $800 million in the bank. So it's not going to affect him like it affects everybody else. But he's one of those players that when you interview him and the season's over, he's not going to cry. He's going to be more along those, it's my job. Let me go do the post-game conference. And, that it is what it is. It's just more of a job to him, and that's why when you give certain money to, certain players, you got to know who you give the money to. And I'm not saying that, he's the wrong player, but, Juan Soto didn't come through. He didn't come through when you needed him to. This team needs a lot of work, folks. This team does need a lot of work. So Juan Soto saying we have everything we need is vastly incorrect. You have no starting rotation. Your bullpen is barren besides Edwin Diaz. Your lineup is horribly inconsistent. Your defense is terribly bad, and your record reflects all of those ineptitudes. I mean, your last 93 games, you're almost 20 games under 500, and you have the 5th worst record in all of baseball the last 93 games. I will repeat that. The last 93 games, we were the 5th worst team in baseball. 5th worst team in baseball. So Juan Soto saying that we have everything we need for next year, again, I mean, you're supposed – I looked at him as a baseball savant, knowing everything. Maybe he doesn't want to throw teammates under the bus, but again, that answer was so incorrect. Tony, absolutely. It's true. I saw a bunch of X posts that Soto disappeared during the last 3 games. He certainly did. Today, he was nowhere to be found. He came up several times. You know, the first time he came up early in the game, a couple of runners on base, hits into a key double play. You know, key double play. That could have been a momentum shifter early on. You know, it is what it is. You know, he came up in the 5th inning. I believe he walked to pass the baton over to Pete. But again, you know, Juan Soto did not do any damage when we needed him to. You know, I guess the only guy who was kind of there the last couple of games was Pete Alonso. Okay, so again, I'm going to go. So the number one question over the offseason, you know, one of the biggest questions, you know, everybody can kind of juxtapose the importance of it, is what is going on with Pete? Are we going to resign him? Or are we not going to resign him? How do the emergence of Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, how does that affect, you know, your determination on re-signing Pete Alonso? Mark Vientos, do you envision him playing first base? Brett Beatty, do you envision him as your third baseman? Who's going to play second base? I do believe McNeil's time in Queens is over. You know, you saw as the season went on, he was providing little value to the team. And, you know, it's the same thing with McNeil. I mean, it's the same thing with McNeil. Him first pitch swinging on every single I'm like so frequently first pitch swinging just doesn't sit well with me when he's the type of hitter that he is. I mean, you know, then you look at other teams across the league. You know, David Stearns has been here for 2 years. You know, other teams in a 2-year span. I mean, you know, you look at the Dodgers in 2 years. They signed Blake Snell. They signed Yamamoto. They traded for Glass now. The Yankees, Max Fried, signed him. Carlos Rodon. Within the last 3 years, they've uplifted their rotation despite losing Garrett Cole. So, you know, they've done that. You know, the Mets, they going to have options. Are they going to be in the market for any of the free agent pitchers like Dylan Cease, Michael King, Framber Valdez? And I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying they should. You know, that's going to be costly, very costly. And then, you know, a guy like David Stearns may double down. Hey, I tried to invest in veteran talent, Sean Manaea. I gave him $75 million. You see, that didn't work. It doesn't work giving these 30-year-old pitchers that type of money. Well, you know what? My response to that is you have to make the right investment. You sign a Montage, you're going to get what you deserve. Everybody and their mother knew that Montage, you know, the goods weren't there. You saw him in New York when he was with the Yankees. Not very impressive. You know, apparently they saw some uptick in metrics when he was with the Milwaukee Brewers, and that was enough. That slight thing that they saw, that, you know, the genius saw, Mr. Smug, he saw that, and that's why he felt that $17 million over 2 years, $34 million total was a good contract. But again, we all know that was a wrong move, and that was vastly incorrect. Okay, so you have the Alonso question, the starting rotation question, and how do they improve the defense? How do they improve the defense? The Mets, we know Brandon Nimmo is an issue, but you're locked into Soto. You're locked into Nimmo. You supposedly have those guys in the corners, giving Soto and Nimmo more time at the DH. Is that a solution? But, how much will that help? Only so much. You really need viable outfielders out there. I mean, you really if you want to have the Mets be open and honest, if the Mets had an opportunity and, if the Mets had an opportunity to trade Brandon Nimmo, and I'm not saying you're going to get a whole crap load of back, you got to remember this guy has $20 million a year, I think, for the next 5 years. So he's signed to a pretty lengthy contract, and his defensive abilities are very, very limited. Would you trade him? You get a relief pitcher, you get a prospect. I got to believe the Mets right now would cut bait, if they're being honest. Would cut bait. And Brandon Nimmo 2 years ago was one of my top 3 favorite players, so I'm a big fan of him. But in terms of going forward and getting younger and getting more athletic, I think, getting that outfield faster, quicker, younger is very, very important. And again, this is knowing that you're locked into Soto for the next 14 years. All right. And then the last big question is, we already discussed it. What is going on with Carlos Mendoza? Okay, so I went to double check. I saw somebody asked about the contract status of Raley and the contract status of AJ Minter. So both of them are a little different. So with Brooks Raley for 2026, the Mets have a club option at $4.7 million. So a little under $5 million. Brooks was making $1.5 million this year. So if the Mets decide to exercise that option, he will be making 3 times as much as this year. If you think it's worth it, he will be 38 next year, 38. So he does have a club option. The Mets can exercise that option. AJ Minter is a bit different. He has a player option at $11 million. So it's his decision whether he wants to opt in with the Mets or opt out, and that is for $11 million. But we already know the first answer. The $24 million player option by Pete Alonso is already answered. He will not opt in with the Mets. So, again, that's wiped off of the Mets' books. So you got $24 million. So I said the Mets, if everybody opts in, they're at about $300 million. So $24 million comes off. So, that puts the Mets right now at $265 million, assuming that everybody else opts in and we sign everybody to, their arbitration, their contracts. So, and then if Diaz if he opts out, that's $18.5 million. And I know these are plays that you want, but again, that gets you down to about $240 million or $240 to $245 million approximately. So just wanted to mention a lot of the guys we signed. Cedric Mullins, he's a free agent. Ryan Helsley, he's a free agent. Gregory Soto, he's a free agent. Tyler Rogers, he's a free agent. So all of those guys, all of those big trades that David Stearns pulled off, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Smug. He pulled off those 3 or 4 trades in particular. All of those guys aren't even an option. Not that you would want to sign them, not that you would want to bring them back. Mullins was making 8.7 mil, Helsley at 8.2, Gregory Soto 5.3, and Tyler Rogers 5.2. So not that you would want to bring any of them back, seeing how badly they played, but you don't even have any options. And the assets that we gave up in all of those 3 trades are just wasted assets. And I'm not saying those guys are going to be world beaters. They're going to be all-stars. But also, you could have used some of those assets in other trades to acquire different talent that could have positively affected the outcome of some of these games. Mayor, you're right. Could we be a bidder for Schwarber? Schwarber, did he hit 60 home runs? Kyle Schwarber with the fabulous season. I want to see what his numbers ended up, because I know this guy obviously had a monster season. Okay, he had 56. So I know I was listening to the radio last night, and that was Cal Raleigh. Okay, but nonetheless, Schwarber's going to demand a pretty penny. 56 home runs, 132 RBIs, 931 OPS. Guy had a great year. And I know he was at that bandbox in Philly, but still, his swing was really on point. Schwarber was making 20 mil a year for the last 3 years, 20 mil. So that was a pretty nice value for the Phillies. So Schwarber is going to demand definitely, I would say definitely around 30 plus. But again, it's the age factor and it's the position factor. He's a DH at this point. He's basically a DH. And I just stated how the New York Mets kind of have to use that DH position for guys like Nimmo, guys like Soto, guys like Vientos. We're just so bad defensively. So are you going to add another older player, albeit a very good bat, a very dynamic bat, but albeit another older player who can't play defense? It doesn't really it doesn't seem like that would be a wise direction to invest $30+ million. It's basically I know he had more production than Alonso, but Alonso, that's the dilemma conundrum you have right now. And a lot of people are kind of leaning on the lines that Stearns is going to let him go. And because of Pete's demands, and you got to assume the demands of a guy, Schwarber is going to demand that high salary as well. So, I don't see it. This is another one. I'm interested in Murakami. I definitely could see a Murakami interest a lot more than a Schwarber, because Murakami fits more in lines with the Mets do. He's a younger player. I know he's more of an unknown, but you could probably get him at a value price. And, we all know Stearns is all about value. He's all about value. So I'm thinking about what David Stearns most likely would do based on the payroll, based on the defensive needs, based on how we're going to have to use that DH position. Because, we're going to have to utilize that DH position. So do you want to plug it up with a full-time DH? And, albeit, yes, you have a full-time DH that is dynamic, a guy who hits 60 home runs. Do I think he would hit 60 home runs in Citi Field? I'd be shocked. I think he'd probably be closer to 40, but still, that's pretty good. That's like Alonso production. So that one would be a little tough for me. That one would be a little tough. I mean, I did want Schwarber a couple years ago when we were sniffing around Vogelbach and we were sniffing around those DH options. And I saw Philly paid him $20 million a year. I'm like, wow, that would be a great signing for the New York Mets. You know, when we didn't have a DH, when we didn't have that, you know, protection for Pete, I'm like, okay, this is the perfect player for the New York Mets. But now, you know, 33 years old, you know, it's a little rougher. Yeah, Schwarber was a steal. That was a steal. You know, the Phillies, they really threaded the needle on a lot of free agent signings. A lot of times when you spend so much money in free agents, it ends up biting you, coming back to bite you. But they made great signings. Bryce Harper, that was a value deal, giving him $25 million a year. I know he's been hurt, but, you know, he's meant a lot to that organization. Schwarber, same thing. Zach Wheeler, wow, the first Zach Wheeler contract, amazing. Now they had to pay him in a second contract, but Zach Wheeler, that first signing, and, you know, he was a free agent, I believe, a year before Cohen came. Oh, man, you know, that was a huge missed opportunity by the Mets. You know what I would love? I would love to just get better incrementally. You know, trade Nimmo to the Rockies. And let me see. One of the guys on the Rockies that I was really kind of high on, I haven't been checking his stats out as of late. Let me see how he's doing. Okay, he didn't have a good year. So this is still might be a guy who could be cheap value-wise. Okay, so the guy who I wanted the Mets to explore, that I saw a lot of potential in, and I don't think he's anywhere close to tapping his potential, was a guy, Brenton Doyle, center fielder. He bats right, throws right, 6'3". He is a two-time Gold Glove Award winner. He's got a gun, a cannon of an arm. Again, he is a two-time Gold Glove Award winner. This year, his offensive stats, not so great. His wins above replacement, 0.2, not great. 15 home runs, 233 batting average. Last year, he had 23 home runs, 72 RBIs, 260 batting average. So, I mean, that was and he had a 4.0 wins above replacement. So his value trended way down. So, I mean, that's a guy that if I think that I could tweak him, I think he's a 5-tool player. He's got the arm. He's got the defense. He had 23 home runs in 2024. So he's got pretty decent pop. He's got good size. You know, that's a guy that, you know, I would take a flyer on, at least that drastically improves your defense. And, you know, if you can tweak his offensive capabilities, you know, I think the fact that he hit 15 home runs, 60 RBIs in cores, you know, that is a bit scary, you know, not the best, but again, like it's buying low on certain players and turning that player into a viable star, a viable asset. That's what David Stearns hasn't done. He really hasn't done that. We haven't had any trades where I'm like, wow, great move. This is why we got David Stearns. Okay, all right, folks. I think this is my third live stream today, so I'm gonna actually get going. But we're gonna keep at this tomorrow. I'm going to be around as well. You know, set your set your notifications. I appreciate all the comments. Like the live stream before you leave. It really does kind of help out the channel. I do appreciate everyone who's taken the time to have comments. I'm sorry I didn't get to every one of you. But again, we will have many live streams on here on out, and we will be covering this Mets team. I can't wait to hear Mr. Smug, David Stearns, his assessment on this team that he built. That is going to be fun. So everybody, great stuff. Great stuff. Too many of you to list. A lot of great comments, but everybody, I want to continue to thank you all. Have a great night. I know it sucks that the Mets lost. If you're not a Mets fan, then for you, maybe it doesn't. But all you Mets fans, don't worry. This is just the beginning of change, and change is good. Change is good. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Let's go Mets.